and welcome to the closing ceremony of this year's Asia Pacific Week Conference. Today's ceremony will feature special performances by the ANU Korean Popular Culture Club, the ANU Chinese Classical Music Ensemble, and a post-conference wrap-up video. But first, we will be hearing from our excellent keynote speaker, internationally renowned social entrepreneur, innovator, and sustainability expert, Mariko McTier, who will join us first from Japan. Mariko is co-founder and representative director of the award-winning social enterprise, Social Innovation Japan, and co-founder of Japan's first water refill app, MyMizu, a circular economy initiative born out of Social Innovation Japan. She is also a council member for the World Economic Forum's Global Future Council in Japan and Tokyo lead for the Circular Economy Club. Featured in the Forbes Japan's October 2020 edition of Self-Made Women, Mariko leverages her experience and entrepreneurial talents to build greater cross-sector engagement with important social and environmental issues. Please welcome Mariko.
Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. My name is Mariko McTier, and it's my great pleasure to be here today, sharing some thoughts with you as we focus on the important theme of pathways to transformation and resilience in an age of uncertainty. Now, as I was preparing for today, I was thinking about those of you who might be joining and at what stage you might be in your life journeys. Perhaps you're a student contemplating your place in the world. Perhaps you're planning to be an entrepreneur or already a budding activist, or some way along your journey as someone who drives change from within an existing institution. And as a young person, you may feel growing pressure or expectation about your role in tackling these multiple crises we face. I was recently at an event on the climate crisis, for example, where one of the distinguished speakers was asked by a high schooler, "What advice do you have for young people like me who want to tackle the climate crisis?" However, the speaker's response was, to be quite honest, disappointing. To paraphrase massively, their response was that as young people, it is our future, and therefore it's our responsibility to ensure we tackle the climate crisis. That was it. In other words, you've got to step up. Now, I don't know about you, but I think this high schooler was hoping for a little bit more than that. I think they were looking for guidance. And that isn't the first time I've heard, or I felt like I've heard, passionate young people being left shortchanged. Kind of feels like we're arriving at the end of a house party where the house has been trashed and you're just handed a mop and told, "Hey, good luck with the cleanup," as the rest of the guests leave. And yet, despite this, I've seen young people all over the world rising to the challenge. And like that high schooler at that event, asking, demanding for better access to tools, to resources, and to the advice they need to be effective. And so today, I thought I would start by sharing 3 ideas that in my short experience, I think have helped me to be effective as a change maker. And I hope that it might help those of you who are on your own journeys and looking for answers. I do so humbly, knowing that many of you will have experiences different from my own, and there's much I can learn from you too. And so I do so in the spirit of peer learning and support, because we need all the help we can get. The first idea I'd like to share with you is that it's okay to be angry and it's okay to demand more. Young people, indigenous communities, racial minorities, the global south, and populations of low-lying island nations. When it comes to climate change, those who are least responsible for the issues we face are also the most vulnerable to its impact. And yet those who have the best access to the tools, the money, the resources to do something about it just aren't doing nearly enough. It's grossly unjust. Does it make you angry? Does it make you frustrated? I'd be surprised if it didn't. It's not okay. But I think it's okay to be angry about it. In fact, I think it's critically important that we acknowledge and act upon our anger. Greta and the youth activism that has shot up around the world has shown us the power of clearly communicated anger. It helps us as a society to orient ourselves, to understand where we need to get to and what is unacceptable. We need anger to ensure that we are not only ambitious, but that we tackle the systemic inequalities and injustices around us. And so I would encourage you to acknowledge your anger, acknowledge your frustration and your emotions, and where it might be effective, to find the opportunities to communicate it. But anger and emotion alone can only get us so far. And so I'd like to share 2 more ingredients that I believe are essential for creating the transformation we need. The first is the importance of designing your future. Our and others' anger, I think, can help us to define a vision for the future. But we then need to be able to build a bridge to that future and to figure out how we're going to get there. For me, this design process is a critical step. We have our goal. So what is stopping us from getting there? What are the barriers, the problems we are facing? What resources do you have available to you? And what are the constraints? Often, I think we can get stuck in our anger, our frustration, or just stuck, overwhelmed, looking at the scale of the problem in front of us. I personally spent years wondering what on earth I should do with my life, gradually becoming more and more concerned about the state of the world. But for me, things changed when I started to look more practically at the opportunities I had available to me and how I might be able to use those to contribute to solving the bigger problem. What does that look like in practice? Well, the issue I wanted to tackle was the lack of action on sustainability in Japan. And Japan is the second biggest producer of plastic packaging waste per capita in the world, second to the US. And for those of you who might have visited Japan, maybe before the pandemic, you might have been shocked at the sheer number of vending machines, convenience stores, places that are just pumping out single-use plastic as if it's completely normal. And this is, of course, a contributing factor to both climate change and the plastics crisis. And in Japan, this excessive use of single-use plastic has become completely normal. So I guess the question I started to ask myself was, what could I do to change what was considered normal? What me and my co-founder ended up doing was focusing on changing one manageable action that we felt had the potential to trigger a wider conversation, to create a wider shift in mindset, and therefore to contribute to solving the bigger problem. A leverage point, if you will. We built a co-created, community-focused platform called MyMizu that connects users with over 10,000 locations across Japan and 200,000 globally, where they can refill their water bottles for free via a free smartphone app, enabling them, of course, to shift away from buying single-use bottles. Now, this might seem small in scale, especially in relation to the scale of the environmental crisis, but I think it's effective for 2 reasons. The first is that in a country that consumes over 24 billion single-use plastic bottles every year, changing this habit in itself could have a significant impact. But the second is more about changing people's mindsets. You know, when we started out, we were told so many times, oh, you'll never get people to refill in Japan. Everyone's too used to this convenience of single use. You've got vending machines everywhere. How many people per vending machine? So you can imagine if we can get we have gotten hundreds of thousands of people to make that shift. People who used to think it was completely normal to buy 3 or 4 bottles a day, and instead are now just carrying a reusable bottle around with them. And it's not just that they realize that they actually prefer this, or it really wasn't that awful, difficult. They had to give up so much. It's not like they had to give up anything to adopt a reusable bottle. But you also create the opportunity to open their minds to the thought of what else might be possible. Now, we've managed to create a bit of a movement in Japan to tackle single-use plastic more generally through this initiative, but it started by focusing on the simple act of refilling, something that is simple but accessible to anyone. Now, the thing is, neither me nor my co-founder is a software developer, an app developer, nor did we have a strong background in technology. So initially, this seemed a little impractical. How could we afford to build an app? But we realized we had other resources available to us. And for example, by running events for like-minded people together, we had been building a diverse community of people who cared passionately about creating a sustainable future. And so when we shared the idea for this platform, MyMizu, the community jumped on it. We found a software engineer who wanted to join us to build it. People who owned cafes and restaurants, they offered to be the first locations to sign up. And we had countless people help us to spread the word and build the platform in other ways. There's no way I could have built an app by myself. But the thing is, I didn't have to. I just had to figure out how to make it happen. I just had to design that future. And this brings me to my next point. How do you get people to join you on your mission? My advice is to pull, not push. We need to invite people in so they can help us to achieve what we can't do alone. Now, whilst this might seem to counter the first point I made about anger, hear me out. I don't think these ideas are mutually exclusive. As humans, we have a tendency to shut down or even run away when we hear something that we don't want to hear. No one likes to be shouted at. That might help us to shelter ourselves from bad news, but it doesn't help us that much when we are in the face of various environmental crises. So what does that mean for you? For those of us who take on the role of an innovator, proactively designing and building a bridge to our future, we need to both carry and honor that anger that motivates us, whilst finding ways for us to invite in the people and the resources we need help from to solve the problem. Now, practically, how can you do that? The first is really clearly communicating your vision, the problem you want to solve, but also where you want to go. This will help people to align themselves with you and to invite people along for the ride. It also helps to identify potential partners and collaborators, people that can help you, and to make sure you understand their goals. And then if you want to invite them in, to be strategic in your communications. Use language and concepts that might pique their interest rather than scare them away. When building Maimizu, we carefully selected language that invited people to join us in building an alternative future. And that has led us to working with dozens of corporate partners, local governments, and even schools and universities across Japan. Finally, it seems simple, but make sure people can contact you. I think a lot of people assume you have to go and pitch every company or partner or colleague you want to work with. But honestly, in my experience at least, if you have a clear vision, mission that is well communicated and an easy way for people to contact you, you'll be surprised how people will reach out wanting to help. And that can ultimately help you to achieve your goals far more quickly, effectively, and at a bigger scale than you would have been able to do so alone. So that was 3 ideas for how we can successfully tackle the challenges ahead of us. First, to acknowledge, honor, and communicate the anger and emotion that comes from seeing the injustice in the world. Second, to be motivated by that emotion to design our futures, being bold and creative and leveraging what we have available to us to come up with solutions. And third, to remember that there are people who want to help and resources that are available to us, and so to take proactive steps to invite them in. More than ever, we need innovative, crazy ideas and people who will take the risks, leverage their passion, and put in the work in order to realize them. And as young people, I believe we are uniquely placed to drive this change. But in whatever role you choose to adopt, as we build the movements, the systems, initiatives, and companies that are going to create the transformation we need, I encourage you to share with, learn from, support, and encourage each other as we build our future together. Because if we do so, I think we might have a fighting chance. Thank you.
그건 누구에겐도 You know I'm so dope 더는 못 기다려져 원래 나는 좀 참을성이 없는 몸 솔직한 게 좋은 걸 But you gotta know yeah yeah 달콤하기만 해도 싫어 So check it 매너 좀 거적한 거는 나도 구분해 yeah 순간 반짝할 거면 시작도 않는 걸 Sometimes 내가 생각해도 I think you're really cool ASAP 내분 조각이 완전 카피 나와 똑같아 나만 잘 알아줘 ASAP 꼭 닮은 내 달콤하니 눈앞에 나타나줘 ASAP ASAP 눈앞에 나타나줘 No, I'm not picky 가끔 까탈스럽대 It's okay, but I care 겁대 놈대 아닌데 오른다면 쉽게 꺼지는 걸 Sometimes 내가 생각해도 에이스는 내 분조각이 완전 카피 나와 똑같아 내 맘 잘 알아줘 에이스 꼭 닮은 내 달콤하니 눈앞에 나타나줘 에이스 에이스 눈앞에 나타나줘 실제로는 어떤 느낌인 걸까 A beautiful, a beautiful 한 번도 느껴본 적 없는 걸 So where you at 기다리고 있는데 에이스 내 반쪽아니 완전 커피 나와 똑같아 내 맘 잘 알아줘 에이스 꼭 닮은 내 달콤하니
brings us to the end of our closing ceremony of this year's Asia Pacific Week Conference. Before we part ways, I'd like to take this time to acknowledge and thank everyone who's joined us for this week or assisted in the organisation of this conference. To the instructors, panellists and keynote speakers, we thank you for your time, wisdom and invaluable insights. To the Dean of the College of Asia and the Pacific at the ANU, we thank you for your continuing support of such an important youth conference. To Patrick Conroy, thank you for your ongoing support and guidance. It doesn't go unnoticed. To James Watson and Luka Vertessy from the CAP Marketing and Student Recruitment team, we'd like to thank you for your invaluable support. The extensive hours Luka in particular has lent to filming and editing footage for the conference this year has been highly appreciated. To Professor Katarina Tewa for your ongoing guidance and wisdom, without which the conference would not be possible. To the organising committee, your dedication to your roles has been a credit to you, and I'm so very proud of the outstanding schedule of panels and events you've been able to plan, organise and execute so flawlessly. And last but not least, to each of the delegates, we thank you for your keen participation, curious minds and thoughtful contributions this week, without which the conference would not be possible. On behalf of the committee, I hope this week has equipped you each with new ideas, knowledge, and a renewed motivation to be compassionate leaders of change in the dynamic Asia and Pacific regions. I also hope by now you will have been able to form invaluable international connections with your fellow delegates. Thank you again, and good luck to each of you in all of your future endeavours.